Hello. This is week 3 already of R622, and we're recording this one to the gods up there, the cloud up there in the sky. I've got an announcement to make. I'm going to probably make this announcement several times, in that the announcement is that we've got an add-on this week. We've got an extra thing going on this week. We're going to have someone come in on Wednesday night. Her name is Susan Bridges. She used to be at University of Hong Kong. I guess technically still is, but now she's living in Australia. And Susan helped build a hybrid learning space at the University of Hong Kong in the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, or Enhancement of Teaching and Learning. And so she'll be talking about that space that she helped design when she joins us on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock this week. So we've got a second guest this week. Also, I could make an announcement that in roughly 2 weeks or 3 weeks, there won't be any guests the week of September 22nd to September 29th, because I'll be in Cairo, Egypt that week. Unless I grab someone on the streets from Cairo, like a taxi cab driver, there won't be a guest on that particular week. So again, for those of you just coming in, we'll have a second guest chat this week with Susan Bridges, formerly of the University of Hong Kong, I guess still technically with Hong Kong, but living in Australia currently. And she'll be talking to us about space, active learning spaces, and so forth, which is a topic we'll have IU people talk about in about 4 or 5 weeks down the road. So this would be a precursor to week 7, maybe that is. Susan, well, I asked her and she volunteered to come in this week. That's why it's going to happen then. Amelia was already in here an hour ago, and Amelia's back. We're trying to just let her back in here, and we're having Amelia's come back. Amelia, we're going to have another guest this week on Wednesday at 8 o'clock, Susan Bridges from Hong Kong, talking about active learning spaces and hybrid spaces. Hi, Edgar's with us. So I'm going to continue the lecture from last time and see if it all works, and I'll hit the optimize sound button. I don't want to optimize video. I don't think I have any videos on this one. And as you know, I was presenting on Education 2020 model. I went through and I've got about 15 minutes here. Bo, let me know when it's 7:15. I'll have 5 minutes left. So last week I talked about my Education 2020 model, 20 roles of instructors, 20 principles of learning. I got through parts of the new roles of the instructor, and they're all listed for us here. And so I'm not going to reiterate them, but the premise is that the instructor roles, and maybe it's not as true with Edgar in Puerto Rico, is the instructor takes a more of a co-equal partner role in the instruction, one who might be a consultant, one who might be a concierge, someone who might be a curator in a museum. All these different metaphors of teachers and instructors break the mindset of a teacher as deliverer of instruction towards one who might be an assister of learning. I think assisting in learning is the primary job of a teacher, whether you use a direct instruction approach, a constructivist approach, a social cognitive approach, an information processing approach. We're always assisting in the learning process, and we're challenging our students in some way, shape, or form. And so we want to think about, how do we create learning environments in this class where we are challenging our students to succeed at higher levels than they ever have in the past, yet not be overwhelmed and not float too far above their comfort zones, or what Vygotsky calls the zones of proximal development. And you could talk about these learning environments in different ways. Probably the most famous person in the field of instructional design over the past 50 years has maybe been Robert Gagne, but he's been dead for 25 to 30 of those years. So the guy who's still alive is David Merrill, originally from Utah State. He's also been an adjunct faculty after retiring, I think Florida State and other places. And he created the first principles of instruction. And if you took P540 with me, if you took R511 with me, you know that those 5 principles involve demonstrating what the task is and what you know, activating prior knowledge and what students already know, and tapping into that pre-existing knowledge, trying to have students apply their knowledge with examples, with cases, with scenarios, with problems, with stories, and then have them integrate across the different lessons that you've delivered or that they've engaged in. And to do all that, oftentimes we start with a task. And as you hear, you got 6, 7 tasks, or you can start with a problem in problem-based forms of learning. Merrill called his the first principles of instruction. And so when I designed my model, I had to come up with a new model because people would resist it.
Resistance is futile.
They resisted my model. I called it the last principles of instruction, the learning activation system template. And I'll go through it briefly, these 20 principles of my last model. Maybe it's going to be the last model I ever do, probably. I've got tech variety, R2D2, and now last. I've not published on this. And so, you know, if you're ambitious and want to publish a book and do it all, like Bo's really ambitious, you know, just put my name down there somewhere in the paper as a footnote, maybe, or an afterword, or, you know, index, whatever. So the number one thing I think of all 20 principles, the most important thing you can possibly ever do is be flexible with students today. This is an age where you have to be concerned about wellness. We have to be concerned about students catching up, and in particular Puerto Rico catching up on the skills they've been not acquired during the COVID and during the earthquake down there, and during the not tsunami, the hurricane, the tropical storm, the power outages, everything else under the sun that's happened in Puerto Rico over the past 5 years or 6, 7 years with Hurricane Maria, and I think they had a second one as well. So you have to be flexible. You have to provide some options. You have to provide some sense of, you know, continuing learning, that they can do it, that they can make the grades, that they can adjust their schedules. And so we have to be welcoming to students in our instruction. It's also making things convenient for our students. And so in the case of this online class, I tell people you can turn things into me. You can come to my house if you live nearby. You can go to my office. You can turn it in on an email. You can put it into Dropbox. You fax it to me. You know, you have to make it convenient to the people that you have in your classes, whether they might be working 2 jobs simultaneously, in some cases 3, or they might be traveling out of the country as an expat, or they might have an illness because COVID's revisited, it looks like today. So find out from your students which way they'd like to turn in their assignments. Take a record of those preferences for your students. Keep a record of them, and so forth. And I see my student Susie Porn Sanchapanroth is with us. Welcome, Susie Porn, coming from Bangkok again. So in fact, she was so excited about Paul Kim, she showed up last night. Thank you for showing up last night. And by the way, Susie Porn, we're going to have an extra guest this week on Wednesday, on Thursday, your time in Bangkok, Wednesday at 8 o'clock at night, which I don't know, is like 7 in the morning in Bangkok. I don't know how many hours difference we are, 11? We're going to have Susan
It's
Bridges.
right now 6 o'clock.
It's
yes.
6 o'clock, yeah. So 7 o'clock on Thursday, your time, we're going to have Susan Bridges from the University of Hong Kong, 8 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday night, Thursday morning for you. So the third principle is the principle of collegiality. You know, trying to treat students as someone you respect, and vice versa. You want their respect as well. But introduce your students to others as if they were partners with you on a learning journey. You're sharing resources, you're sharing ideas, you're sharing advancements, you're sharing the ideas that they produced, maybe creating a wiki book like I've done in my classes that can be revisited next semester and the semester after that, becoming a legacy for the course and something you contribute to and you also might get from. So we want to think about, you know, especially at a graduate level and undergraduate level. And I think one of my students asked me if he could do a book review and publish it. Maybe it's my other class, Brian Malone. I think that's 511. He wants to write a book review and publish it this semester. I said, you want, by all means, you can replace any assignment you want. If you create a publishable paper and send it to a journal, it doesn't have to be published. If you write one and send it to a journal, you can eliminate any assignment you want. Just get it approved maybe ahead of time, maybe. Okay, next principle. Principle of cheerfulness and optimism, the Bo principle, always happy guy, you know, and really striving to recognize, this is a recognition principle. Oftentimes we recognize mistakes. We recognize what students didn't do. We recognize failure too often, and we don't recognize successes enough. We don't recognize accomplishments. We don't recognize moving above to the next level. We don't advancements. We don't recognize, the insights that a student had that helped another student out. In the cafe in this class, we've had a couple people correspond back and forth with ideas for each other, and that's great. In the team thread and in the cafe thread, that's all great. So, the SMILE principle, and Paul Kim will be here in 45 minutes talking about SMILE, Stanford Mobile Inquiry Learning Environments. We want to have so I once team taught with someone, I won't say his name, but he was in IST, he was at IUP. He would always start with what students did wrong. He'd never start any feedback with what they did right. And at the end of the semester, we had one student came to see me. He wanted to sue us. He literally wanted to sue us for the turmoil, the terrible environment that was being created. The bitter. There was a lot of bitterness there. So start with something positive, then point out what they need to improve on. What pointed criticisms you might have, some areas of concern. But if you start with some of the things that were close to right or right, oftentimes they'll end up doing they'll go the extra mile to fix it, to make sure that it is all up to par or what your standards are. So maintain your high standards. One way to maintain high standards is to showcase the prior student work that's pretty good, and you're setting the bar higher and higher. And so when Susie Porn does her chapter in my class in 2007 and 2006, when she took my class last, I save that work and show it the next semester to students. And I say, look at what the student did. The student wrote this paper and presented it at a conference, or whatever it was. So, you can have final presentations for the whole class as a conference style presentations. I've often done that, where I hold a mini summit or conference or whatever to showcase students' work, put it in a gallery. I once had, and I've got 5 to 10 minutes left, I once had teachers in Southern Indiana in a project here at IU, and the teachers would cry. The first week we'd be teaching them, they'd be crying. They say, I can't do that. There's no way. I'm teaching full time. I don't have time. Then we'd show them the project gallery of prior student work, and they'd look at it and say, oh, I can do that. Oh, okay. The tears would go away. We would know we were successful when we saw tears. Then we knew that we were pushing them. We were challenging them, like Vygotsky said. We're pushing them to the edges of what they can do. And when those tears went away, even better. So it was called the Ticket Project. If anyone wants to read about it, we ran for 5 years in Southern and Central Indiana, Teacher Institute for Curriculum Knowledge, about the integration of technology. Back then, in those days, all the schools got $100,000 grants, and they had to spend 30% on professional development. And it was big. And not only Indiana, Missouri, and then all of a sudden the money dried up around 2001, 2002. We didn't see that stuff anymore. But have high expectations. Create scaffolds, create job aids, but also include some sense of, we said flexibility, convenience, choice and options. You've got choice and options in here. You can pick any door you want to walk through. Door number A, door B, door C. What was that TV show that had all the Bill Barker, who died this past week? I forget what that show was called. What was it, Bill?
Price is Right.
Price is Right. Yeah, the price should be right in terms of, this class, everything's free. You shouldn't have to buy anything. So the first time I taught online, I said, here's five tasks, and the students hated me. The next time I taught online, I said, here's 15, 20 tasks. You pick what 3 you want, 5 you want. They loved me. The first time I taught online, I had Emily Hickson, who's now a Purdue Calumet faculty or Purdue Northwest. I said, Emily, you can give them advice on what to do every week. And the students, I know if I reminded them of the task, they'd hate me, and all this stuff. And so Emily gave the feedback. She sent the reminders. At the end of the semester, students loved her because she sent the reminders. They have busy schedules. They wanted the reminders. I thought they'd hate me so anyways, you learn after teaching online or blended after a few times, but let people choose. Don't assign the same, here, you got to read this whole book and read this whole, pick 3 articles out of the book or 4 articles out of it and so forth. Empower your learners. Negotiate the syllabus with people. Have them vote on segments of the syllabus. Have them decide the presentation order. Have them build a product like a wiki book into something bigger and bigger and bigger. and or a podcast show or a YouTube channel. Have them create, give them autonomy, let them be in charge of something, right? Empower your learners, and then give feedback. Not like my friend, my colleague did, who was only negative feedback, but have multiple forms of feedback. Have peer feedback, system feedback, instructor feedback, guest feedback, self feedback. If the instructor is the only one giving feedback in an online course, he or she will die. You have to find other mechanisms for giving feedback, because students want feedback on everything they do online. You do not give that in a face-to-face class. You can feedback to 1 or 2 people. Online, everyone wants feedback on everything. If someone does, there's nothing, no. Well, you can build in peer feedback, critical friends, web buddies, email pals, whatever it is, for getting feedback. Experts, having Paul Kim come in and give you some feedback on ideas, or whomever, right? Or job aids, or reflection sheets, just checklists. So I've been designing little checklists to self-evaluate one's learning. And then there's a principle of spontaneity, right? Where Bo just jumps in and we all do the wave, and all the whatever we want. You have to do something spontaneous, or everything's going to be boring, right? If you want to try stuff out every once in a while, and try something new. So today I put in, right before class, I put in one of Paul's chapters in my book into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT generated 5 questions for Paul right before coming here, like 5 minutes before coming. I spontaneously did that. It's going to change the second hour of today's class. Principle of organization, 5 minutes. Thanks, Bo. Principle of organization, create some organizational scheme. I used to always love agendas, and I never go through every item on the agenda, but it's nice to have them, and students will have them as handouts. But we don't teach face-to-face anymore, and I don't have to print out these agendas. I sent you all a little agenda here earlier in the week. Yet, to be able to go within chaos, to have chaos, you also need organization. You need both. Life is a generative, evaluative process. We need our brains generating ideas, but we also have to evaluate them. We have to create divergent, convergent curriculum. We need both. We need people in society who can divergently think about options and solve problems. We also need convergent thinking to move to logical conclusions. And then
no, he's upstairs studying.
What's that?
Sorry, my daughter came in.
Oh, if she wants to teach this class, it's fine. The principle of sharing, what we're doing. That's probably, I mentioned the first principle, flexibility, being the most important. Today, this is the principle that's gained the most importance over the past 20 years, because we used to not share. I mean, when I go to Australia, Australian teachers say, Curt, teachers are sharing in the US, they're sharing in the UK, we don't share here in Australia. Then I go to UK, and they, Curt, teachers are sharing in Australia, they're sharing in the US, but we want to share in the UK. They come to the US, and they say just the opposite. And now today, we're expected to share, because there's all these free and open resources online that we find and we use and we experiment with and so forth. Then there's a principle of non-traditional learning, including immersive forms of learning, which will be the traditional form of learning perhaps in 10 or 20 or 30 years down the road. And I'll talk about this more in the spring when I teach R678 Emerging Learning Technologies. I'm 99% sure I'll do that course. I'll talk more about the book there, Learning at the Back Door, Reflections on Non-Traditional Learning Across the Lifespan by Charles Wedemeyer. I'll skip that. Principle of passion. I mean, if you're not enthusiastic about your courses, if you're not inspiring your students, they're going to feel it. They'll notice it. They'll notice it real fast if you're not excited about what you're teaching. If you're teaching all the boring classes and that persona will exist in this interactions with your students in this learning environment that you're creating. You also have to create authentic learning tasks and problems and make it relevant and meaningful for your students, or they won't be connected to your course. Some people would say this is the most important principle, and it actually is a week in this semester on authentic learning. It's a week in 511. If you're taking 511 with me, we have a week on authentic learning. It's a common theme. So it's a common problem or issue, and that's why you have options to make the learning be relevant. But also, you have to be accepting of the failures along the way. And the reason I have the Mosaic bus in there, it's the active learning space project, but the Mosaic bus broke down and was fixed and is running again. You know, we all have problems. We all have failures. We all have things that confound us that we don't complete in time. You know, we all make errors. I'm no longer an accountant because I made lots of them. No one wants me to do their tax returns and save them hundreds of millions of dollars that probably make them spend on. Anyways, there are failures that happen. You have to be, you know, you have to try things out in maybe in a virtual world, in a simulated world, before people try them out in the real world, especially chemistry and physics and teacher training kinds of thing. And then we have the principle of expanded resources, expanding, always adding, such as I've added to the syllabus this week. I added a couple articles, but adding videos and audios and, you know, podcast shows and animations and simulations and ebooks and whatever else. We're in an age of expanded educational resources. We came from an age of scarcity of resources. This is a totally 180 change in education, from everything relying on books to relying on everything else except books today. And then you have to connect your learners and have them, you know, have the learners interconnect with others, maybe in Facebook, maybe in Twitter, maybe Instagram, maybe in Canvas, wherever it is. Have them create a social space where there's a, you know, socially shared identity, mutual knowledge, intersubjectivity that's happening in and amongst your students. They feel each other. They can grieve for each other when someone's hurt. They can empathize with them, and they can celebrate with them when the successes happen. Like this Friday in the PhD program will be the dossier 2, the qualifying exams, and hopefully the students will pass. We can celebrate it, and, you know, that kind of thing. The principle of apprenticeship, right?
Look, this isn't a Romulan labor camp. I don't have to answer your questions. And I don't give a damn what you think.
So that's Q on the right, and that's Picard on the left, the commander of the ship. And Q's kind of apprenticing him every episode and pushing him and asking him questions, what if kinds of questions, and having him ponder these possibilities, pushing him to explore, to clarify what he's saying. He's almost on his inner self talking back at him, his alter ego, not necessarily, but he's forming a cognitive apprenticeship of sorts where there's reflection, there's coaching, there's questioning, there's explanations, there's clarifications, and so forth that's happening. We want to create cognitive apprenticeships in our classrooms where we are coaching our students to push beyond where they've ever been before. And then we have to give them a vision and a purpose behind what it is that we're doing. We have to, you know, give them the background information, give them the meaning behind it. Why are you doing it? Once you give them that, the results are significant. I've seen many studies where they've utilized an innovative educational technique like reciprocal teaching, where the students become the teachers. If they don't tell them the principle behind it, don't tell them the purpose behind it, it fails. If you tell them the purpose behind it, it does tremendously well. So the students need buy-in, in effect. Those are 19 principles. I'm still working on number 20. If you have suggestions for number 20, send them to me. Bo unmuted his mic. Bo, you wanted to jump in?
It's 7:23. I was just letting you know.
Yeah.
A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.
That could be principle 20, Bo. Just, you know, I'm a little late, but it's precisely when I meant to be. And so,
I'm never going to argue with Gandalf.
Nor am I. I was dressed at Gandalf in New Zealand for a big debate, which I lost. I was Gandalf the blue.
That's a good place to be dressed up as Gandalf in New Zealand.
Well, in Hobbiton. We actually went to Hobbiton for the conference social, which was nearby Hamilton. That was 7 years ago. It just feels like yesterday. Well, these are my 20 principles. So my last model, my learning activation system template. If you try these things, you know, try them out, see if they work. You know, try 4 or 5 of them. You don't have to try all 20 or all 19 as it is. And then the 20 principles are of teaching, the roles of teachers, Education 2020. So this guy I'll talk more about in R678, the guy on the right, Charles Wedemeyer, the other Charles on the left, Charles Vest. Wedemeyer created the OpenU in the UK and was at the University of Wisconsin when I went there. And I took correspondence courses to get into graduate school that he built and others built at Wisconsin. And Charles Vest said, let's make all MIT free. So two Charleses changed the world, in effect. Charles Vest died recently, in fact, and has impacted the Open MIT project, Open Courseware project, has impacted millions and millions and millions of people around the world. They've been translated into Chinese and other kinds of languages. I, in turn, after that happened, after MIT said, let's make everything free, I wrote the book, The World is Open, How Web Technology is Revolutionizing Education, with these 10 principles. Paul Kim, our guest next hour, is highlighted in the World is Open book with his Pocket School project and other things he's done in Palestine and other places. He's just back from Syria. He's just back from Oxford. In fact, I thought it was today, a couple of days ago, he got back. When I went to Singapore, as you can see, people are greeting me, the world is open. When I go to Bangkok and go visit Suzipur, everyone, this is Sri Pratam University, I think. So I go to Bangkok, I go to Illinois, I go to Indiana, everyone greets me, the world is open. When I went to Taiwan, everyone greeted me, the world is open, everywhere. They know the book. I mean, I have all of you raise your hands, but we'll skip that. Go to China, go to Shenzhen, China, everyone's greeting me. They don't know what to do there. They don't know. Anyways, I'm going to skip some of this and move to the last part. So the world is changing.
Did he freeze on other people's
Different
computers?
level of education to talk about 3.0, 4.0, 5.0. 4.0 is the getting students to be innovative. And Bo, I'm losing my internet connection. If I get disconnected, I'll pop right back in. But I'm still here, right, Bo? Yeah.
Yes, so, as of right now.
As of right now. These two gentlemen have written about the future of higher education in two books that came out a couple of years back. The guy on the right will be my guest in my podcast show in 2 weeks. His name is Brian Alexander, along with Donald Clark, a big AI expert. He'll be on my podcast show in 2 weeks. The guy on the left, so the guy on the right is Brian Alexander. The guy on the left is Joshua Kim. Joshua writes for Inside Higher Education. So we're in the midst of an evolution and a revolution, and things are
so beautiful. Precious.
So you all have my precious, because that's my free book. I sent to everybody. So the e-learning revolution is coming within reach with all these fancy principles I've just outlined, but I can't do it alone. So I'm going to need all of you to say on the count of 3, I cannot do this alone with me. 1, 2, 3. I cannot do this alone. 1, 2, 3. I cannot do this alone. 1, 2, 3. I cannot do this alone. And so my notes are posted. Actually, my notes are in your Dropbox accounts. You can get all of them. We're in a change. This change is happening. It's happening fast. It's happening all around us. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to get into small breakout groups and have you brainstorm what your principles of learning would look like if you were to create your own learning environment. I've given you my 20. I would like people to get into different teams. And it may take me a minute because we have 24 people here. So one way to do it, just do automatic. But I think I still want to manually do this. And so I'm going to do 25. I'll do 5 teams. Okay. And then I'll assign team 1. I'll put Bo in front of team 1. You'll have Amelia twice, and Carol, and Claudio, and Emmanuel. So that'd be group 1. Group 2 will be Edgar, Emily, Evan, Jill, and Madison. And Edgar, you can lead that group for me. And Jill with you. And Lena, group 3 with Matthew, Michelle, Millie, and Rachel. Boy, I'll pull Rachel out for a second. Sao Hao, I'll put you in that group. And that's group 3. Okay, there it is. And Rachel, Sudhiporn, Ty's iPhone, and Virgie. That will be the next group. And it's group 4, and group 5 will be the last group with me in it. So Yaoi, Yuhan, and Alicia. And so I'm going to open these rooms up and tell you to, we'll bring you back in about 5 or 10 minutes, but you know, come up with a few principles anyhow, 3, 4, 5, or you can replicate the ones I had. You know, it doesn't matter to me, you know. Did you all get a room? Emmanuel, did I assign you a room? Emmanuel?
One of my favorite pieces that we talked about was the reciprocity of learning, assuring students that we are learning from them, maybe not as much as they're learning from us, or maybe more than they're learning from us. So that was some really good principles that we talked about. And I would invite Sudhiporn or Ty to also jump in. Emily, you already added something from our group, so pass the baton.
I also want to apologize to those watching the recording. I forgot to hit play again, so we missed the first 5 or 10 minutes when we came back, but it's recording now still.
Yeah, the group said make it culturally relevant, culturally to the group of students that you have. If you're teaching kids from different countries, to know that you have to find out ahead of time to make it culturally relevant. Let's say if you're reading a poem or something like that, it might not be culturally appropriate for that culture, for that group. So, and the students will feel kind of hurt. So before that, that's what came up in the group too.
Rachel, I always, when I was teaching, going back to what you said, I would always try to learn alongside my students, even if they were 4th and 5th grade kids. But like some of the new technology, the new tools that were rolling out, Google Classroom, the first day that thing came out, I literally sat down on the floor with my students and I said, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to use it, but we're going to figure this out together. And that night, at like 10:30, my students were so excited about it that they were having back channel text conversations in there, and I had to get on and say, hey, go to bed, your parents are going to kill me, kind of thing. But it was really neat. We learned it together, and it made it that much more meaningful to them. So that was really nice.
I will say, I just noticed we have 7 PhDs in this discussion forum. So unlike other classes where you just have your professor or whomever, we're fortunate to have several people with us from Japan, Yayoi from Thailand, Sudhiporn from China, both Lena and Alicia, and Jill from Taiwan, and then Edgar from Puerto Rico. So we do need to take a quick break for everyone here because Paul should be here any minute now. So it's 3 minutes to 8 according to my watch. So if we can take just a quick 3, 4, 5 minute break and come back, and then Paul will be with us, and he's might have a short presentation. I might show one of his videos very briefly. We're gonna have a discussion. It's gonna evolve. I just chatted with him, so so I'm gonna stop the recording here, and we'll see you all in 3, 4, or 5 minutes.